morning, everyone. This is Morgenweck with DotNetNuke Corporation. Before we kind of get things started, I just want to do a quick check, make sure that everybody can hear me and see the screen. If we can get a few people to raise their hand or post some feedback, great, great. Looks like everything's working fine. Good. So again, my name is Morgenweck. I'm the Director of Product Management here at DotNetNuke Corporation. I'm also the founder of Active Modules, which was acquired by DotNetNuke in February of 2011, and also the creator of Active Social. So the purpose of this webinar today is going to be to give everybody a good overview and answer some questions about where things stand with Active Social and migrating to 6.2. So the first thing that I'll do as I go through this the webinar will be to show a comparison of some of the features between Active Social and DotNetNuke 6.2 so that you can have a good understanding of what to expect. I'll talk a little bit about planning your migration, what you need to consider, things you need to look out for. I'll go into some details about the actual migration process, and then talk a little bit about the DotNetNuke roadmap for some of the social features. I'll keep an eye on some of the questions as they come in. I might answer some during it, but I'll definitely have some time at the end to dive into some questions. So the first thing I want to talk about is, comparing Active Social to DotNetNuke, or comparing DotNetNuke 6.2 to Active Social. And really, in some regard, it's not really a fair comparison because there's such a big difference. And one of the big differences is the actual implementation into why we did things a certain way. So as I'm sure everyone that's attending this webinar is aware, Active Social is a module that's designed to be plugged into your site and added to pages. So it's something that sits inside of DotNetNuke. It's an extension, and it basically has surface level features, things that help people more from a visual perspective and interaction. When we look at things in DotNetNuke 6.2, we wanted to have a lot of that same functionality, but we also wanted to have some deeper integration. We wanted to expose different parts of the API so that it's more of a platform, more of a framework for building social applications. So when we look at DotNetNuke 6.2, it's really just the first iteration of where we're headed with social. And a lot of times people think that Active Social was just kind of migrated and then plugged into 6.2, and that's not the case at all. The features that are in 6.2 are pretty much brand new rewrite modules and APIs of what was from Active Social. We used a lot of Active Social as kind of a pattern, design pattern, a lot of the things that we learned from that, but almost everything was written completely brand new from scratch for 6.2. I'll dive into some of the comparisons as far as some of the features. So the first thing that we need to consider are the profiles. So in Active Social, you had a concept of a profile which basically sat on top of the DotNetNuke core profile. It was a module that was very difficult to customize. It had a lot of flexibility, but it was very difficult to customize. It was even more difficult to integrate third-party modules. So when we set out to build and enhance the profile in 6.2, we took those items into consideration, and we came up with a way that makes it much easier and fits very well in the DotNetNuke page management, module management paradigm. So in Active Social, the profile was basically one single module, and you had to force modules to be loaded into it. So it really wasn't that great from a development perspective. Like I said, it had some great flexibility, but from an extensibility and from a development perspective, it was not the ideal situation. What we did in 6.2 is we took a lot of that same capabilities, but we offered additional features so that building a module for a profile is almost identical to building any other module in DotNetNuke. The only difference is that you have an option to filter based upon a profile ID or a user ID. And then when you talk about, like in Active Social, we had tabs, and the tabs were something that was very difficult to customize. We wanted to have that same, a similar functionality, but we wanted there to be a greater ease of use, a greater ease of management. So we introduced just additional pages, sub-pages of the profile page, and modified our console module so that we can display those child pages underneath a profile. We've already seen some great examples in 6.2 where this has been leveraged. You're already starting to see modules start to support what we call profile modules. So we're looking for this to just continue to grow as we further enhance the platform. The next piece is the journal. So the journal had a lot of functionality in Active Social. As you can see in the screenshots, we had things like status, share, link, note, add photos, upload files. And also we had a lot of functionality like the likes and the comments, and so we wanted to make sure we brought all that over. But the other thing we needed to do is that we realized that if we were putting this into the core, we really needed to make sure that the journal scaled really well, that it had ideal optimization for database scalability. So the journal was completely rewritten for 6.2. The database structure was optimized so that it uses the least amount of space possible in the database so that it will grow only as it needs to grow. And we also streamlined what in Active Social what we call the journal tools. We streamlined those and made it a lot more, improved the user experience. So in the text box for adding a journal, you have the ability to add a photo, attach a file, or share a link. But all of that is consolidated into one editor that provides a much more robust user experience. Another key piece of the integration was groups. So Active Social had a fairly robust groups feature, but it did have some pretty big drawbacks. Almost identical to the overview that I gave on the profile, the groups functionality in Active Social suffered a lot of those same problems. It was difficult to customize, it was difficult to skin, and again, it was very difficult for module developers to try to integrate with the groups in Active Social. So what we wanted to be able to do is we wanted to leverage some of that same functionality, but really leverage the framework so that we could have the best experience there. So in DotNetNuke 6.2, we changed all that. So very similar to what you see over in a profile, you have a group view, and then you can have sub-pages under there, which are just child pages of the group view. And then you can have items like group members. You can see on DotNetNuke.com we have group events and you have group activity. So pretty much anything that you can filter based upon a group ID, you can drop into a group view. Again, all they are pages and modules within a page. And it makes it very easy and allows you to follow the same paradigm that you typically would in DotNetNuke for module development. The other advantage to groups in DotNetNuke 6.2 is that groups are the same thing as roles. In Active Social, groups were a completely separate entity, and we had to do that because there were some limitations with the roles in DotNetNuke. We fixed those limitations, removed those limitations in DotNetNuke 6.2, and we leveraged the roles capability so that it basically is the same thing as a group. In 6.2, you have the option when you define a role. The role can be a security role, it can be a social group, or it can be both. And what that means is that you have one container for managing users and grouping users together. The other advantage is that means that your social groups capability already has an API, already has a way that third-party module developers can integrate with those capabilities. So things like being able to add a person to a group after they complete a purchase, or add a person to a group through some other mechanism using the API, it's all already there in the framework for you. Next piece is messaging. Messaging was very robust in Active Social. It had the concept of notifications, which nothing else in DotNetNuke had that, and those were things for like approving friend requests, approving groups, and some various other pieces. One of the things that we wanted to do in the core is we wanted to leverage the same messaging capability and flexibility, but we really wanted to improve notifications. We wanted to make sure that notifications was an API that was very easy for developers to consume and interact with, so that things like, let's look at, say, a blog post that has comments that need to be moderated. That blog developer could leverage the notifications API so that the user or the administrator can go to notifications and approve or reject comments. The same thing with forum posts. The same thing with flagging content. So what we really want to see is we want to see that module developers will integrate with the notifications API so that we can provide a unified dashboard for end users to interact with the system. Prior to notifications, and even still today, because not all modules are using notifications yet, a user has to jump back and forth between different areas of their website. So approving blog posts, approving forums, approving content, they have to go to all different pages. With leveraging the notifications API, all of this can be handled in one place. And that means that it'll be a much better user experience for the end user. The other piece is the member directory. The member directory was pretty flexible in Active Social as well, but it didn't scale very well. So what we needed to do is we needed to improve that in .NetNuke 6.2 and make sure that it scaled really well and that it performed well. And so what we did is we leveraged the new services framework that was introduced in 6.2 along with Knockout.js, which is a client-side framework for rendering. And we were able to produce a very robust, very flexible member directory. And this gives you the capabilities for things like add as friend, follow, and send message. And with .NetNuke 6.2.4, you'll be able to customize some of the profile properties that are displayed. There's a bug in the member directory right now that prevents you from doing that, but that will be coming in a maintenance release very shortly. So next we're going to talk a little bit about the migration. So I'm going to take a quick look at some of the questions that have been asked so far. Let's see. One question is, are all the Active Social features in .NetNuke 6.2 community? Yes, everything that is that I'm presenting here today is based upon .NetNuke 6.2 Community Edition. All of the social features that we wanted to port over were ported over to community. Okay, so let's talk about the migration a little bit. So the migration is something you do have to plan. This is a migration. It's not an upgrade. It's not going to be just as simple as installing a module. It is going to take a little bit of effort. Now, we are working on ways, and we have a module which I'll show a little bit, give you some background on in a few minutes, that is going to help ease this. But given the changes that we made and the improvements that we made in 6.2, it wasn't possible for us to do a direct upgrade. There would be too many issues that we would encounter trying to manage that as part of an upgrade process. The other thing is, we didn't want to have any dependencies moving forward on Active Social. We've basically retired Active Social. We've improved the capabilities into .NetNuke 6.2, and we just felt that the best option is going to be a migration in the long run. So let's look at some of the steps. So when you're looking at the migration and things that you need to consider, you need to think about your Active Social implementation and see where things stand for you right now. So the first thing you need to look at is, have you customized Active Social at all? And what I mean by this is that, have you modified any of the profile views? Have you modified any of the group views? Have you modified anything with the journal? Have you modified any of the core controls? Because those are going to impact your migration. The next part is, are you using any third-party modules with the journal? There are several third-party modules that integrated with the Active Social journal, and if you're using those modules and your site depends on those, you want to make sure that they've been updated for integration with the .NetNuke 6.2 journal. The other thing to consider is if you've created a custom Active Social theme. Since Active Social was a module and wasn't baked into the actual framework, it was very difficult for it to be skinned. So that means that in Active Social we had a concept of themes, and those themes were the way that you would apply different styles to the Active Social modules. In .NetNuke 6.2, you wouldn't be using themes, you would simply be using your skins. So what you have to consider is, if you've created a custom Active Social theme, you have to figure out how that's going to translate over into .NetNuke 6.2. If you're a business or you have a large site, well, you need to train any users or admins. Well, they need to be brought up to speed with any of the new features. That of course takes some time. You don't want the features have changed. It's not something that a person is going to look at and say, oh, that's pretty easy migration. I mean, a lot of the features are very intuitive, but they're going to be different for your existing users and admins. So you need to consider if you're going to need to train anyone. And again, do you need to create new skins? In DotNetNuke 6.2, there's a concept of a profile skin. You could have the concept of a group skin. So you have a user skin object. So you need to consider if you're going to need to create any new skins before you complete your migration. And probably one of the big questions you need to ask yourself is, do you really need to migrate anything? Or everything? So think about what data do you really need? I'll get into some of the details of what's migrated in just a few minutes, but that's something you need to ask yourself. Do I really need to bring over all my journal entries? Do I need to bring over all my groups? You need to think about that before you go through the migration process, because it could end up creating more work for you. The next one is, do you need to migrate now? Active Social will work with DotNetNuke 6.2. Those features are there. I mean, of course, we're not supporting them any further. They're not going to be enhanced. But is there an immediate need for you to migrate your data? You could continue to stay up to date on DotNetNuke and using Active Social while you work on planning your migration. But you need to ask yourself, do you need to migrate right now? What's your urgency? So let's talk a little bit about some of the deployment options. So one of the options is just Active Social with DotNetNuke 6.2. That is possible. I know of several sites that are doing that. And it works pretty well. Obviously, it's not as integrated as a complete 6.2 solution, but it is something that would continue to work for you if you have a community already running on Active Social and DotNetNuke. Should you just build a new website based on DotNetNuke 6.2? It is quite possible that your best option is to build a new website and then migrate some of your data over, or just start completely from scratch. Of course, that's going to depend on your site. If you're in the middle of launching a site, this might be a good option for you. If you have a site that's been active for several years, obviously this isn't going to work. But we do have another option, which is to migrate the Active Social site to DotNetNuke 6.2. This will be, you'll upgrade your site to DotNetNuke 6.2, and then you're going to migrate your data from Active Social over into the new modules in DotNetNuke 6.2. I'm going to check for some questions again real quick. So the profile picture issues, there was a question about profile picture issues in Active Social and on DotNetNuke 6.2. You can, the way around that is you comment out the profile picture handler that was introduced in DotNetNuke 6.2 because it creates a conflict with Active Social. Once you comment that out of the web config file, the profile pictures will start working again in Active Social. So there's some questions about active forums. I'm going to come back to those in just a second because we're going to get into that in just a minute. So let's take a look at what you're going to need in order to migrate. So you've decided that you're going to migrate. There's a couple things that you're going to need. The first and foremost is you're going to need a backup or a development copy of your site. You're not going to want to just move forward with this migration on a live production site. Mainly because you need to consider all the different variations in the site, things like the skins, the different customizations, and of course the data. You want to make sure that the data is ported over properly before you do it on your live site. So you'll need the latest version of DotNetNuke 6.2. The current released version is 6.2.2. Today we will release DotNetNuke 6.2.3. That'll be available later this afternoon. And then future there'll be 6.2.4 will be coming next month, but all the tools that we're going to be talking about are based upon DotNetNuke 6.2.1. So at a minimum, you want to be running that. The next piece that you'll need is Active Forums 5.0, and Active Forums 5.0 we released in RC last night. Still working on a few issues there. We did migrate Active Forums to C#. I'll cover that in just a second. The other piece that you're going to need is the Active Social Migration module, which again is available on CodePlex, and I'll dive into that in just a second as well. So for Active Forums 5.0, first, I see a lot of questions come up about migrating data to Active Forums 5.0. There is no migrating of data from Active Forums 5.0. Active Forums 5.0 is a direct upgrade from Active Forums 4.x. So you'll just install Active Forums 5.0 on top of your existing site, just like you would any other upgrade, and everything is there. So in 5.0, there have been a lot of changes. Many of the changes are to better leverage the DNN framework. With Active Modules, when Active Modules was managing Active Forums, we did a lot of things so that we could maintain compatibility across multiple versions of DotNetNuke. With 5.0, it does require DotNetNuke 6.2, and that means that we're able to leverage a lot of the new features, a lot of the capabilities in the framework. So it has full support for the social API, things like notifications, journal integration. All of that is built into Active Forums 5.0. As I mentioned just a second ago, the source has been converted to C#. Some issues were uncovered last night with that. Those will be fixed. They've actually already been fixed. They'll be checked in later today, and we'll release another package of that before the end of the day today. Another question that comes up a lot about Active Forums 5.0 is what features. Some people think that we've pulled out features. It's the same. Active Forums 5.0 is the same exact feature set as Active Forums 4.3 with one exception, and that is the mail connector. The reason we removed the mail connector was because it had a dependency on a third-party library that was not open source, did not have a license that we could distribute with. So I've seen some other people comment that we've held on to this for, that this is going to be coming in PE. That is not in our current plans. At some point, we may offer similar functionality to the mail connector, but it would not be something that is specific for Active Forums. If we do this, it would be something that is more specific for the platform. So things like the blog module, messages, even forums, or other modules would be able to leverage these capabilities. But as I said, at this time, we do not have anything scheduled for this to be completed. Another thing that I have to mention is that Active Forums 5.0 is not compatible with Active Social. So if you're going to continue to use Active Social in .NET 6.2, you will not want to upgrade to Active Forums 5. You can continue using the current version of Active Forums with Active Social and to maintain your same compatibility. And then finally, since we made Active Forums open source, we're looking for other people that want to join the team. We've already had several people participating as far as finding issues and reporting bugs, and it has been a great support. We are looking for other people that want to contribute code fixes and actually participate in the releases. So if you're interested, visit activeforums.codeplex.com and post in the discussion forums and let us know that you're interested in joining. Let's see, there's a question about Active Forums. Is Active Forums the new DNN Core forum modules, or is it just a means to upgrade existing implementations? That's an excellent question. So Active Forums 5.0 is the new core forums. The core forums has been retired. It was retired almost over a year ago now. So there are no additional updates for that. We do have a conversion script that we posted on CodePlex today that allows people to migrate from the DNN Core forums over to Active Forums 5.0. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Active Social Migration module. This is designed to be a one-time use data migration tool. What that means is that it's not very forgiving. It's intended to migrate the data, and it has been tested and it does go through, but it is a one-time use tool. So that means that if you run into errors, you're going to want to restore your database and then go through the process again. That's why it is extremely important to make sure you have a backup of your database. It's going to migrate data for profile pictures, relationships, groups, and the journal. So the profile pictures, Active Social had the option for uploading user profile pictures. Those were stored differently than the core. The migration tool will take the Active Social profiles and convert them over to the DotNetNuke profile picture. Active Social had, of course, friends. In DotNetNuke 6.2, we have the concept of friends, followers, and you can also define additional ones. So the migration tool is going to convert those relationships of friends over into DotNetNuke 6.2 friends. The other piece is groups. Groups will take all of your, this is the one area where you have an option to choose what you want migrated. So in the groups area, you'll be able to select the groups. I realize that a lot of people might have some groups that they don't want to migrate. So what this will allow you to do is select the groups that you want to convert over, and then it will take those groups, it will convert them over into a role, and it will set them up just as you would if you created that group from scratch in DotNetNuke 6.2. It'll take care of all of the journal data when it goes to the journal migration. It'll take care of all the members, and it'll also take care of the group owner. As I mentioned, restore the database and try again if an error occurs. The source is in C#, and it's also available on Codeplex. It's available now at activesocial.codeplex.com. It's nothing fancy, but it'll get the job done. It's right now. It is on Codeplex. It's listed as beta. We're looking for some feedback on this, and we want to get this wrapped up this week, and so that we can go ahead and get everybody upgraded that wants to upgrade. So there's a question: does the migration include files such as images? So it includes any type of file or photo that's associated with the journal that was posted from a user or a group. It will go ahead and convert those over. It also takes into account to some degree, the gallery structure that was in Active Social. In 6.2, we do not have a gallery, but what it will do is it will move those over to the users folder. In DotNetNuke, every user gets their own file store area. It'll take those images and move them over, so if you have a module that can integrate with that file store, it'll go ahead, those images will be there for you. So here is what you would what you'll see when you use the Active Social migration utility. Of course, there are several warnings there, and that's just to make sure that we do things safely. What you'll want to do is you'll want to execute each of these tasks in the order, and we've tried to segment the way that this is run. So, for instance, you move profile pictures. You'll click Move Profile Pictures. They'll take you to a page where you click a button, and it'll move the profile pictures for you. The same with friends. The group migration is the only one that is a little bit different. You'll get to choose the groups that you want migrated, and then it'll do that for you as well. And then the journal migration, this is the one that will probably take the longest for most people, and this does continue to run. It'll give you feedback that it's running, but it will take a while, so please be patient with this one. If you complete everything in order, it does work. We have seen some issues with the group migration. We believe that those are all addressed. But those that have a development site or a test site that want to kick the tires on this utility and give us some feedback, we'd love to get that wrapped up this week. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about the migration steps. Let's see, we've got a couple questions here. So the question is, do the 6.2 social modules have to be installed before being able to run the migration tool? So you have to upgrade to 6.2 before you run the migration tool. When you upgrade to 6.2, all the 6.2 social modules are automatically installed. Another question is, if you don't use groups and friends, should you migrate them anyway? Click the bullet. It's not going to hurt you to click the bullet. I mean, it'll go ahead and go through the steps. It'll realize that there's no data there, and it'll just go through it. But there is no requirement of clicking on the items. It's just pretty much, and that's one of the reasons why there's no dependency that you have to go through the process. You just have to make sure that you go through it. For example, if you click the journal option, you do have groups, and you click the journal option first without migrating your groups, the journal migration will fail because it's not going to find the group to role mapping that is set up in the step prior. So there's other questions. I'm seeing a couple other questions about the process, and I'm going to dive into that right now. So the first one that I want to talk about is a migration steps, which is a simple site with no customizations. This one is pretty straightforward. What you'll do is you'll back up your site, of course. You'll upgrade to DotNetNuke 6.2.1 or higher, so you'll upgrade your site just like you would any other DotNetNuke upgrade. Next, you'll install Active Forums 5.0. If you don't already have Active Forums installed and set up on a page, you'll want to go ahead and add Active Forums to a page and just go through the click once configuration. Just make sure that that's there, but chances are you already have Active Forums 4.x installed. Then you'll want to install the Active Social Migration module and add it to a page. So just create a blank page. The migration module does use JavaScript, so really for just to be safe, put this on a blank page using the default DotNetNuke Dark Knight skin. Make sure there's no other modules on the page before you run it. And then execute the migration tasks in order presented in the module. This is just really important. Go ahead and click through the tasks, and then you should be good to go. Then once you're done there, you want to go to Portal and make sure that your profile page is linked properly. So if you had a site that was running Active Social, chances are that you had set up the profile page and the registration page to point to custom links in Active Social. You'll want to make sure that those are going to the default profile page in DotNetNuke 6.2. Then what you want to do is you want to just go through your site and check other pages within the site and replace Active Social modules with the corresponding DNN modules. So this should be pretty straightforward because we try to keep the names pretty similar. So in Active Social, where you had the journal, you would want to put the journal on the page. You'll see it in the module drop-down. It'll say just journal. In areas where you had groups, you'll want to just add the DotNetNuke Social Groups module to the page. Another thing to consider there, what I would recommend for anyone that isn't familiar with the Active Social, with the DotNetNuke 6.2 modules, is to download 6.2 as a new install and then go through the different modules and become familiar with those modules before you try to deploy them on your dev site or even your production site. That'll help you get a good understanding of the different capabilities that are there. So the next one is the advanced site with customizations. This one does have some more steps, and they're not even really steps that are just like, depending on your installation, depending on your configuration, they're just not steps that you can just walk through as one person, but it'll depend on your site. So the first thing you need to do is determine your customizations and determine a strategy. So that means, did you customize the Active Social profile? Do you have custom tabs in your profiles or groups? You may need to talk with your designer or site admin. If someone helps you set these things up, you might need to get some feedback from them and just get a good understanding of what is actually visible there and what you need to do. The other part is check with third-party vendors and determine if they have 6.2 compatibility. We have been getting a lot of the module developers to update for 6.2. However, there's still other module developers out there that want to try to target as many .NETNuke installations as possible, so they're hesitant to take a dependency on 6.2. So the more you can push module developers to leverage the social API, the better off everyone will be in the community. Then once you have those items figured out and you have a good process, then is when you go through the regular steps. So you back up your site, upgrade to 6.2.1 or higher, install any of the third-party modular skin updates, and verify the functionality. Make sure that the third-party modules that are compatible with 6.2 actually work with 6.2. Do the same thing with your skin updates. Just make sure that everything works as intended. Then you install Active Forums 5.0, install the Active Social Migration module and add it to a page just like you would in the other instance. Execute the migration tasks in order presented in the module, and then go through and verify your settings again just as you would before. And then again go through the different pages. So this is going to be, I have seen some very heavily customized Active Social sites, and believe me, if we could provide a magic module that would convert everything for you, we would, but there's just too many different things in Active Social from a configuration standpoint that just do not match up directly with items in 6.2. So it is unfortunate that some of those sites will have to do some customization or some additional changes. However, the advantage of doing that will definitely pay off in the long run. DotNetNuke is committed to the social capabilities in the framework, in the platform, so you will see, I'll get into the roadmap issues, and the roadmap for features in just a few minutes, but this isn't something that you're just going through it just so you can take advantage of 6.2. You're going to go through this now so that you can take advantage of the 7.0, 7.1, 8.0, whatever releases we have in the future, because they're all going to leverage these capabilities. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is that while you're going through this now, you're going through this now because Active Social was a third-party module. As we move these items into the core, DotNetNuke has a very good policy on backwards compatibility and non-breaking changes. So that means that as we move forward, if we decide to, for some reason, change a capability or change a feature, there is going to be an upgrade path, and you should not have to go through this jump through these hoops again. Let's see, there's another question. Can you migrate from one instance to another? I'm assuming that you're referring to a portal instance, and no, what this does, everything does map to the same portal instance. Another question is, once we migrate, can we uninstall Active Social? Yes, you can. Active Social will, there's in the journal, some of the file paths will remain to some of the Active Social paths, and that's okay. Just make sure that those files are still there. And the Active Social uninstall will not remove those. So you should be perfectly fine uninstalling Active Social. Okay. Another question is, what issues to expect if we currently have a custom theme, customized core files for Active Social? What can be done to avoid it? So that is probably that fits into this as with a more advanced site with customizations. What you're going to need to look at is how things are customized and what some of those customizations are done. So I have seen instances where people will heavily customize the Active Social journal and in regards to some of the UI capabilities. So you'll need to see how does that apply to the journal that's in 6.2. Do you have to do those customizations again, or is the capability that's in 6.2 what you need to do that? If you're talking about some of the themes, then keep in mind that the themes and the core files from Active Social, they're never used again once you're migrated. They're not used at all in 6.2. The only thing we're using is data, and that's why it's being migrated. So if you customize those files, those are essentially going to be gone, and you would need to have that same type of capability in either the core profile or the core social groups or those types of features. You just need to make sure that you have the same functionality that you need. I see some other questions regarding to what I would consider specifics as to their migration. Going back to the activesocial.codeplex.com, there is a discussion forum there. I would encourage people to to share their thoughts, share their feedback, share some of their questions that they have regarding some complications that they might have. If I can provide answers, Ben Nelson, who has always been doing support for Active Modules and Active Social, he also works for DNN Corp. He will be able to answer questions as well. And then also, hopefully, as more people start to use the migration tool and migrate to 6.2, we can get more of the community members participating and answering questions as well. So another question is, will uninstalling the Active Social module remove the legacy tables, files, and folders, or will there be some manual cleanup? So uninstalling Active Social will remove the tables, but some of the files that are in the portals directory will remain. Depending on how you had things in the journal, you may want to keep those there because things like direct links to files and images might be necessary in the journal. We've tried to update the paths and move files as much as possible, but it is problematic when you're talking about a site that has about 250 to 500,000 entries in the journal. So it does sometimes will leave certain file types behind, but you would have to manually clean up those files. Okay, so reporting issues with the migration tool. So please report any issues on activesocial.codeplex.com. Use the issue tracker. Make sure you provide as much detail as possible. We may ask for a backup of your database. Again, this is going to be handled by either myself or Ben Nelson, so if you've been an Active Social customer, chances are we've helped you before, and we would do our best to go through the same process again. We won't be doing any type of hands-on migration because we want to make sure that as we do the migration, it has the best benefit for everyone. If you are a DotNetNuke PE customer or you have an active support agreement with Active Modules, you can create tickets through either the help desk or through the store, and Ben Nelson or myself will help you out there. But really, I encourage you to use the activesocial.codeplex.com, and so that other people can benefit from questions and support issues that come up. This is open source, so patches are appreciated. If you find a bug or you find a way that we could do something better, please feel free to share it, and we'll add it to the project and, of course, give you credit for the contribution. Let's see, are there any other questions at this time regarding the migration before I kind of go into the roadmap and features? So the question is, does Active Forums 5.0 work within social groups as they do in Active Social? If so, are there any things to be aware of with the migration? So it does work with basically what you'll have to do in social groups is you create a discussions page and you add an instance to add an instance of Active Forums to that page. What Active Forums will do on new groups that it detects a group ID, it automatically creates a new discussion forum, and it'll define it from there. When you're in this mode, Active Forums knows when it's in this mode. It gives you some other additional options underneath the module settings, so you can define things like the default security and so on. As far as the migration goes, there is an issue with porting over, doing the linking right now. That will be resolved today as part of the groups migration. And so at that point, there shouldn't be any issues with the groups. There will be probably some issues related to links. We've added some code to try to take care of as much of the linking as we can. So for example, if someone's embedded a link to a group discussion from Active Social and someone goes and clicks on that, we're trying to do our best to capture that and do that, but that could be an instance where a product like URL Master or another URL management tool might come in handy if you think that you have a lot of that type of content. Okay, so looks like I don't see too many other questions, and there's a few others. If I haven't answered, we'll get back to you, or you can post over there on the forums. But what I'm going to do now is kind of get into some of the details of the social features and our roadmap. So when we talk about the social features and the roadmap for DotNetNuke, we're talking about 7.x. So we're planning on a 7.0 release. It should be later this fall, and then of course another probably 7.1 again in the summer of next year. But so these types of features could drop at any time. They are in order as far as the priority as we look at our roadmap today. Social groups, there are some of the features that you can expect in social groups. So there will be a My Groups capability. So this would be a module that you could add to your profile view, and a user would be able to see the groups that they belong to, and other users could see those groups as well. We've also added the capability of being able to edit a group name. So one of the limitations in 6.2 is that in the role API, you're not allowed to change the name of a role, but this was something that we needed for groups, so now you can edit a group name. The other thing that we've done is we've given the ability for you to manage group owners. So that means that from when you're managing the roles, we're managing the users in a role, you can specify one of those users or multiple users to be the group owners. Another capability that we've added is group search. And that is basically searching the title and the description and bringing back a list of results. The other piece that we're still working on is custom properties. You probably won't see that for a couple more releases, but it is something that is on our roadmap. The My Groups, edit group name, manage group owners, and group search are going to be in 7.0. You can expect to see those in the first CTP, which is in the coming weeks. So the other option, other piece is journal. Some of the features that are coming for the journal include taxonomy. This is the ability, for those of you that use Twitter, you know how you can type a hashtag and those will come up. So we're adding the capability for the journal to integrate with the core taxonomy, similar to hashtags. Then the ability for user tagging, so that you can address people in journal, you know, using just like in Twitter again or Facebook as well, where you could do the @ symbol and then a person's name. The other thing where we want to do is improve the image handling. So that means that things like the image resizing, it does have automatic image resizing, but we want to add back that capability that we had in Active Social, where the images were resized and you could zoom in and zoom out on images. Another big functionality that we want to add is search, and then we want to add the ability for RSS feeds as well. The taxonomy and user tagging and improved image handling, we're hoping to have those in for 7.0, but it's possible that those will be in 7.1. The other item on the list is Open Graph Protocol. And some people may not be familiar with this. There's some great articles about it. But this is basically the way that Facebook and other social media sites are sharing information and really digging into the social graph. So we want to add some capabilities into the framework, things like under site settings. You'll have some default properties for Open Graph Protocol. Then you'll have page settings, then API options that go along with that. We're hoping that this will make it into 7.0 as well. And then relationships, there'll be some API enhancements. So being able to query based upon user types, and then also potentially seeing related users, suggested users, things like that we're hoping to expose in the API in the future. Let's see, I have had quite a few questions pop up. Let's see, one of the questions is, any plan to improve how profile images are handled, crop to aspect ratio? So the in DotNetNuke 6.2, there is image resizing in there, and it does handle aspect ratio, but we do not have cropping capabilities. That is something that is on our roadmap, but it's what we call a minor enhancement, so it's something that I hope that we'll see possibly in 7.0 or 7.1. But we do want to have some improved profile handling for the pictures, and the same thing with group pictures. We actually would like to have that capability for any time a person is managing an image in the framework. So a question is, what about group categories? That's a good question. So Active Social did have a concept of group categories. We do not have that in DotNetNuke 6.2. We do have the ability to filter groups by a role group, so you have that capability. We're also looking to add integration with the core taxonomy, so that you could use taxonomy to define and filter groups. That is something that I'm hoping that we'll see. There are some enhancements coming with taxonomy in 7.0, and so at that time, that would be a good time for us to look at that again for social groups. Question is, are there any plans in the future to let create a group within a group? We do not have on the roadmap at this time the capability for subgroups. We have had that come up a couple times, but in order to do that, it would basically mean that we have to make a significant change to the way that we structure our roles, and that is something that we've looked at before, but it's really not something that we've had enough demand to justify the level of effort that would go into that at this time. So another question is, the member directory shows deleted members. How do I remove them from this? They're not present anywhere else. That's actually a bug in the member directory, which I believe is fixed in 6.2.3, which goes out today. If not, it will be fixed in 6.2.4. Okay. Are there any other questions regarding either the migration or any of the tools or anything? We have a few minutes left, but I've been trying to answer most of these questions as we go along. If there's something, if you asked a question I didn't answer, I probably thought it was very specific, please feel free to post that over in the Active Social. .codeplex.com. And we'll be looking for feedback there. Feel free to ask any type of question that you have regarding the migration or getting your site up and running on DotNetNuke 6.2, and we'll be glad to help. Let's see a couple other questions. Is this documentation for the steps to migrate? There will be some documentation on that Codeplex site. Should be finished up later today. We'll also have the slides from this presentation available. Not sure when it would be available. I think it should be available in 24 to 48 hours. I believe that if you registered, you'll get an email. Oh, wow. I said I was going to cut things off so I get a lot more questions. Let's see. So if we're using Active Forums 4.x, is it safe to upgrade to AF5 now? I wouldn't upgrade to the one that I posted last night as an RC. I'd wait till the build that I'm going to put out later this afternoon. There were some issues related to the C# conversion that were found last night and this morning. So those have been addressed. The new package will be deployed later today, and that will be something that you can use, and it'll also be something that whether I label this an RC or the actual release, any future releases will be upgrade support. So question is Ultra Video Gallery integration also possible in DNN 6.2 for social modules? I know that a few people have asked about that. I don't have an answer. That's something you'll have to reach out to the vendor for. I know that Ultra Video Gallery and Ultra Media Gallery had an option for filtering by user ID. I'm not sure if they ever added support for group ID. Another question is, will there be any tutorials on creating modules that integrate with the new social features? There are several videos in the video library on DotNetNuke.com. There's also blog posts that talk about the different API aspects. There's also, I believe that there have been a few tutorial videos on journal integration, and there was a webinar around the time of 6.2 that was done by our community team that talked about building social and group modules. Another question is, just for clarification, there is no gallery equivalent in the new DNN. That is correct. We did not integrate a gallery solution. There's already several gallery modules in our ecosystem. Even there's a core gallery. We really felt that it would be best that if one of our module vendors or Forge projects provided support for the social API. It's a good opportunity for a module developer to leverage the API and get some recognition for their module. There will be some details. If you know of module developers that are hesitant to use it, we're going to have a contest that we'll be announcing in the next couple of days that will be basically to encourage module developers to take advantage of the social API. Any module developer can participate, and then Sean Walker will be reviewing the modules, and the module that he deems fit, deems the best, will be part of his keynote at DNN World in October, and then any module that participates in the contest that actually works with 6.2 will be mentioned in the keynote as well. Okay, so let's see a couple other questions. Same with events. Yes, that is correct. A question was about the same with events and shopping cart. We really didn't have a shopping cart functionality in Active Social, but there are really any commerce module that integrates with security roles will work with 6.2, and then yes, it is the same with events. We do not have an events module in the social capabilities, but there are several others in the ecosystem. Okay, well, I think that's about it. Again, feel free to ask us any questions on the forums, and we'll be there. I appreciate everyone attending today and hope that everyone found this useful, and we'll be upgrading to 6.2 as soon as possible. Thanks, everyone.